What's up guys, Jake from MACkite. Welcome back to Kiteboarding. Today I'm going to talk about something we have a lot of experience with here in Michigan, and that is making the most of those light wind days. So I'm going to break it down into really the three ways to do it. That's a big kite, a big board, or with a hydrofoil. I'm going to kind of rank them based on my personal preferences, take you through what I like and don't like about each, and hopefully it helps you down the road decide which direction you want to go when it comes to expanding into those light wind sessions. So let's start with my number one favorite way to get more riding in light winds, and that is with a big kite. I think it's just really easy. It makes the day fairly predictable when you have your quiver. Let's say we're going down to the beach and it's just kind of passing those threshold winds. For us, that tends to be 10 to 12 knots. And I can go ahead and bring a 15 or 17 meter to really take advantage before it hits 15. Once it goes over 15, 16 knots, I'm then probably looking to size down to my 12 or 13 meter, depending on the kite I'm going with. So what's nice again about the big kite is you can take your one bar, you can take your 2, 3 kites, depending on how much variability you're going to have, and you have a fairly predictable session. You know which board you're going to ride, you have your harness, so there's not a lot of extraneous gear. One kite on the back, one kite on the front, and you're ready to rip. What I like about big kites is they just give you more power. So they're not necessarily, I think, the best method to really eke out a session in those threshold winds. That might be a foil, we'll get into that later. But it's a really great way to have fun when there is enough wind for light wind riding. So you're not going to necessarily take it and have a ripping session at 10 knots, but rather when it's blowing 12 to say 15, 16, that's just going to be a more powered session. So you're going to be able to jump, you're going to be able to do some tricks, you're going to be able to jam up wind better versus if you were on a smaller kite. I think it's a really good opportunity as well to learn how to fly a big kite in light winds, because you just learn a lot of skills that you necessarily don't learn when you're in powered conditions. So one of the keys for my early success was spending time flying in light winds. I not only learned a lot about wind direction and kite control, which was really, really valuable, but those times I pushed it and I stayed out too long and put my kite in the drink, I also learned how to self-rescue. I would learn how to self-launch, self-land. I realize you can't do that everywhere, but there are moments where it's really valuable to have those skills. And if you're able to learn those in light winds, especially on something like a big kite that's fairly slow, I think that's a great opportunity to hone those skills while keeping the consequences fairly low. For example, this time of year we can ride, but it is dang chilly. So if you don't have good experience with a self-rescue at this point, those are precious moments. So if you go down and you don't react immediately, you can really put yourself in some trouble and have to jettison your gear. So don't discount the importance of learning in light winds. It can be pretty frustrating if you don't get a session. But then again, you're at the beach, you're in the water, how bad is life? So big kite, number one, I love them. Next, I would go with the hydrofoil. The hydrofoil is close to being number one, but I think that added steps and having to carry it down to the beach make it number two, if I'm being honest. It seems like a pretty superfluous reason, but just having to make the room in the van for the foil, for the board. Actually, one of the reasons I have a van is I can keep them combined, so I'm not assembling them at the beach. But then carrying it down, sometimes that's hard to do in one trip, especially if you're squeezing in a session. It can be, it just takes extra time having to do that double trip down for your session and back up. The foil though is so dang fun. I think what I like about it is you're learning new skills. It just feels otherworldly. I've described it before as like a magic carpet ride. It's silent for the most part. Some foils hum occasionally, but you just feel like you're floating, and you can really get moving in such light winds because once you're up and riding, there's just so little resistance. I've had some of my favorite light wind sessions on a foil. Again, it's really, really hard not to say it's number one. I just find myself having to have the time to set up my foil and bring it down. So I think I still go big kite. So when it comes to picking out the right foil, that's going to vary a little bit on when you're looking to use it. If you are looking to take advantage of light winds, you're going to want something that's probably a surf foil for most brands. For Slingshot, for example, that's the Infinity 76. You can go smaller than that, but it's just not going to have that same low speed lift and stability. You can go larger than that, but if the wind comes up, it's really easy to get blown off your foil, so to speak, by just having too much power, too much lift. So I think a surf foil tends to be a fairly good all-around light wind foil option that you can still hold down when the wind sneaks up. The nice things about foils are their front wings are so modular these days that if you want, you can switch for the conditions. That is, I feel, one of the drawbacks of the foil is if the wind all of a sudden sneaks up, you can get blown off the foil. So then you're gonna switch over to your twin tip. And that can sometimes be a bit of a jarring transition. Sometimes you just wanna go out and shred on a foil. So by having too much wind and then having to take the foil in and change your front wing or switch to your twin tip, it's just a very different style of riding. I guess you should consider yourself lucky being out there and being able to ride for a day. Like, that's awesome. But it is one of those downsides. So let's go over the pluses for the foil. It is a very novel experience. You're learning new skills and it just feels very different, and there's excitement for that. It also works really, really well in light winds. I think it's probably the best way to take advantage of light wind conditions. If you pair a big kite with a big foil, man, now you are in business. But that's kind of not in the spirit of this video if we just have to pick one. So foil, best for light winds, really fun to ride. The downsides is it is more gear you're hauling down to the beach. And also, if the wind really comes up quite a bit, you might need to either switch out your front wing or your board. And again, that can be a little jarring if you weren't planning on doing so. When it comes to the advantages of the big kite, you're still flying a kite, which is awesome. As the wind comes up, you're gonna have more power. So on those marginal days, you're still able to jump, do tricks, have a lot of fun. So the advantages of a big kite is it's very easy to carry down to the beach. Again, one kite on the back, one kite on the front, and you're ready for a whole day of ripping. It's also an ability to still fly a kite. You're gonna have more power, so you're still gonna be able to jump, do tricks probably, and that's really fun as the wind comes up. And then if you wanna switch, you simply put your kite down, pump up the other one, and you're ready to go. That is also one of the disadvantages, is it does take up more space. Sometimes as you're switching, it can be a little bit tough to get that right. And do you leave it up? Do you take it down? Leaving it up can expose it to additional wear, UV exposure. So it's not quite as seamless as you might think, but I think overall it is still fairly simple. Also, I don't think it's quite as efficient as a foil. Personally, again, I'm okay with those downsides because it's just so much fun to have a powered boosty session in light winds. So number 3 on the list is going with a light wind board. Generally, this is going to be a twin tip, and they exist in a couple different shapes that do different things, but they're optimized for light wind riding. So you have some that are fairly wide. That's going to give you a lot more surface area as you add length to it. And that's just a big boxy barge. It's really great for mowing the lawn. You have longer and skinnier boards. That's going to allow you to build more board speed. That's a little bit more of a carver. You get that upwind drive by building that speed. And then there's hybrids of these, like the Light Wave Wing, which has a wider tip and tail and then narrows off. So kind of combining the best of both worlds. Light wind twin tips are super, super fun to ride, but they do tend to be a little bit more lawnmowers. I'm not saying they always are. I know there's plenty of guys that are out there shredding on them, but when I find I'm riding them in lighter winds, I'm doing a lot more cruising. That can be great too. Sometimes it's nice to just go out there dolphin watching, but you're not gonna be playing with them probably. If you load and pop on them, there's just a lot more force there. You have to be a bit more precise. You're hauling around a larger board on your feet. So for me personally, I just think it's worth cruising around and having a good time. So your light wind board doesn't necessarily need to be a twin tip, however. And this kind of gets onto some of the novelty of foiling, where you can use something like a surf shape. So there's days where I haven't been able to catch a wave in a while, I'm kind of jonesing, and I'll grab my surf shape for a light wind session. There's actually some pretty cool benefits to this. It allows you to refine and hone your surfing technique a bit, getting those transitions down, getting your placement down, how you carry through on an edge. That then translates to those days where there's a nice wave and it really matters. The extra volume of your surfboard really makes a difference for light wind tacking. You sometimes want to think about your fin placement. It won't come quite up on edge like your twin tip will, but it's still a great magic missile for shooting up wind and having a fun session. And again, because it's not a twin tip, you're either riding toe side or doing some transition, so you're still working on skills out there, and that's part of what makes kiteboarding so fun, is working on those skills. I think that kind of gets to the crux of this video and why I prefer each of these in their respective order, is because of the skill building and the novelty they provide. I feel like with a light wind kite, I'm able to go out there and still practice jumps and tricks. And in fact, I'm able to do them in a safer environment. The stakes aren't quite as high as when you're out blasted on your 12 or a 9 meter and you make a mistake. So you really get to focus on kite control. It's a bit slower, but that probably makes you more precise. It's a little bit lower, but that's good. It helps you dial in the rotation and the timing. So you can still progress and have a lot of fun with a kite. When you jump over to the foil board, again, it's novelty. This is a very unique feeling experience. And me personally, I feel like I have so much to learn with foiling, transitions, balance, switching around. So it's always exciting, you know, sometimes a bit frustrating if it's been a while, but I feel like I'm learning and progressing. And then with twin tips, I still have a good time. It's probably the medium where I do the least though. I'm just out there cruising, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's why it's third on my list. I do put the asterisk with the surfboard because I think that's really fun. It's a good way to build skills. And it just feels fun being on a surfboard. A lot of us have surfing backgrounds, so it feels nice paying homage to that when you're out there on the water. So again, to review, kite, foil board, twin tip, that's my order. Your order can be vastly different. This is just my experience and what I prefer. But the reality is anything that gets you out there riding is a win. Guys, as always, thanks for checking us out. This has been Jake with MACkite.